back, everybody, to another edition of Your Picks. Joined here by man Alex. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, James. Good to be back. I know last week I didn't get to do the best bets video, but excited to break down this card.
Yeah, man. We got 14 fights overall, I believe. It's a hell of a lot of fights for the UFC. I think they're constantly adding, some fighters. Maybe not the best people in the world, but that Endeavor deal got them banging out a fight every week. So here we are. Before we get started on the Jack Hermansson, Joe Pyfer fight night, wanted to recap how we did last week on Delete Safe versus Imov. First off, we did okay. I mean, one unit. I'm never going to, kind of say anything negative about being positive. But here at Pure Picks, for all you Pure Pickers, we want to try to get that gig green night, right? We want to really get that green candle every week. And, one unit, it's all right. It's an okay thing. So, we're always going to strive for more next time. Let's just go over some of the plays that we had. So, first off, we were pretty heavy on Natalia Silva throughout the week. All three of us, I believe. First parlay that we had with her was Silva, Kizraev, over 2.5, Maxim. Silva, I mean, self-explanatory. Had some people in the comments, some pure pickers, kind of debating whether Silva was a fade versus Livia Rujo. Hope you guys saw what happened and played out. I mean, that was the worst case scenario, 29-28, and that's exactly what happened. So I think we read it pretty well there. Kizraev, really not applicable to this discussion, is an eye poke. Who knows how that fight would have gone. I hope they do a rematch, though. I mean, I feel like Israel was probably still going to win that. That's just my opinion, but we'll never know. Over 2.5. This one was pretty shaky to beginning. Not gonna lie. Maxim had Charles Johnson in a whole world of trouble in that first round. I think he knocked Charles down maybe once or twice, and yeah, it looked really shaky. But the benefit of having that over 2.5 is that we kind of medium brained it because Charles Johnson actually came back and won against Maxim. So I was really glad that we had that for the parlay instead of Maxim money line. And over 2.5, once again, this is something that I really like to play in parlays, the round lines, because you don't have to pick the right fighter. You just have to understand how the flow of the fight's going to work. So that was something that I really like to attack there. Next one, this is an L that I'll take. I was convinced throughout the week, at the tail end of the week, that Urbina was going to be the pick, even though I knew this guy had zero defense in striking and grappling, and it turned out to be true. I mean, Charles Radke, not even the best striker in the world, but he's still tagged up and pieced up Urbina. Not a good look there. And if we pick just a safer guy, say like Demba Garimbo or something, I wish we picked him instead of Gilbert Urbina. They're around the same odds. I mean, that would have been a great time to cash that parlay. But hey, we take that L. And in the future, I'm never backing a guy who has no defense again. I'm good with that. Um, a good pick that Gerard had. I think he had the fight goes the distance for Medeiros versus Quinones. That was a good one. I was on that side too. That over 2.5. When I looked at it, it was plus 100, and it just turned to the minus 125, minus 130 throughout the week. So I really like that goes to decision and turned out to be a decision fight. Really close fight too, by the way. That one could have gone either way, 29-28 either way, depending how you look at it. So good thing we played the prop there. And my personal favorite parlay that we played was Imov and over 1.5 on Pogues. Over 1.5 on Pogues, self-explanatory. That's another really classic prop. At this point, it's probably a system play for me. If you have two sloppy heavyweights, not that skilled, just go over 1.5. I mean, that's something that usually cashes when I look at it. Pokes and Peterson, classic definitions of people who, honestly, I don't know if they're UFC caliber, and they're probably going to be in a sloppy fight just given how they fight and given their skill set. And Imvov, I mean, I tried to tell you guys at the tail end of the week because I remember in the beginning I thought that at least they had somewhat of a chance. But I just thought about it. I was like, man, if Imhoff just does not try to grapple at all with this dude, he's just gonna kill this dude. And it turned out that to be true. I mean, Delice looked freaking lost out there in terms of the striking. He looked really bad. There's like a lot of 10-8 rounds in there, and probably should have got finished. But hats off to him. He's a very tough guy. He could have taken the DQ win even if he just stayed down. But really tough fighter, and I'm probably going to be looking to fade him next fight though, Delice, depending on who the opponent is. And Alex, I'll let you finish off the last one that we had.
Yep. So pure pickers here. We took an L with Randy Brown to win by decision. Um, I wouldn't lie to you, pure pickers, but this really should have been a dub, as we had uh, the the pick really should have been a two-leg parlay with Randy Brown and Natalia Silva, 1.33 units to win 1 unit. But we just decided as a group like literally last second to pick Randy Brown by decision instead. Obviously, Randy Brown knocked Salikov out in the first round, so it didn't go our way. But yeah, I mean, for me personally, I was really high on Randy Brown, and like James mentioned, I was on the Natalia Silva train as well. So looking back, we really should have just done the two-leg parlay, 1.33 to win 1 unit. But I mean, it's okay. Still ended up 1 unit, which is all right. But we look ahead.
Yep, definitely. And I'll take majority of the blame for that one, by the way. I mean, I kind of convinced Alex to go with the decision. Yeah, I should have just believed in his undying trust on Randy Brown because he broke this fight down twice already. This was the second time doing it, and I think
Yeah.
he was heavy on Randy Brown the first time they were supposed to fight last in December or so. So yeah, we'll just improve, keep on improving, and try to get better next time. And the great thing about the UFC, like I always say, is that fight card every week, and there's going to be 14 opportunities for us to cash this week. So let's move to the fight card. It's going to be Hermansson versus Pyfer, Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, classic UFC Apex kind of card here. And the first fight that we have, this is going to be Daniel Marcos versus Aoriqileng. A really interesting fight here. I think the UFC they do have a pretty deep roster, and having a guy who is undefeated, has fought in the UFC before, opening up the card, I think that's pretty damn good. So Daniel Marcos, he's actually 15-0, 5-0 in his last five. He's coming off of that split decision victory over Davy Grant. He's facing off against Aoriqileng, 25-11. He's actually 3-2 in his last five. He's coming off of that decisive decision victory over Johnny Munoz Jr. And just for the odds for this fight as well, we have Daniel Marcos at minus 250 right now, and he opened up at a minus 160. So people have kind of been steaming Daniel Marcos at this point over the course of a month or so. Alex, I'll let you start off this breakdown. What do you think about Marcos versus Aoriqileng here?
Uh, so I've actually been seeing a lot of love for Aoriqileng on Twitter. But I think Daniel Marcos is a side here. Even though his last win against Davy Grant, was highly contested. Um, I personally thought that Davy Grant won that fight, but as it pertains to this fight, I feel like he should be able to get past a guy like Aoriqileng. Um, I think this is a step down in competition for Daniel Marcos. I think Davy Grant probably beats Aoriqileng, to be honest. And I just don't think Aoriqileng does well against high level strikers. So, I kind of foresee Marcos tagging Aoriqileng similar to what Zahabi was able to do. So yeah, give me Daniel Marcos here. Um, I I put a bet on him personally when he was minus 200, so earlier in the week. Um, so, now minus 250. So it seems like more and more people, even though I see love for Aoriqileng on Twitter, it seems like more people are maybe some sharps are putting money on Marcos. So that's kind of how I see it as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing the same thing on social media too, so I get where you're coming from. Um, Daniel Marcos, I feel like the price is affordable just because of that last fight that he had with David Grant, right? A lot of people thought that Grant probably won that fight. And Marcos, even though he's 15 and 0, I mean, he showed a lot of just signs of like low volume, like freezing up a lot during the fight. It just seemed like a different fighter as opposed to his previous UFC bouts. Now, the thing that I didn't like though, he seemed too comfortable just moving backwards and trying to strike from there as opposed to being the aggressor like he usually is. I do think that Marcos is pretty solid overall, like everywhere. Like he's good power, accuracy, fights really well when he's in rhythm. He can target the legs and the body as well, so he's not just a headhunter. He has a fantastic 89% takedown defense, so he really keeps the fight standing and is a really good defensive grappler in that sense. I also like that he's 15 and 0 and 8 decision wins and 7 KOs. So it shows me that he has the power and the cardio to last all 3 rounds if needed to win. Aoriqileng, I mean, I think that he's coming off of a high point. Solid win over the butt scooter, Johnny Munoz Jr. His striking's pretty good. I think that he likes to move forward and strike with volume. He has okay power. His defense, though, is where I have a pretty big hang up on him. I mean, his striking defense is 50%, so not the best. He absorbs more strikes than he lands, so that's not a good ratio as well. I do think that Richie Lang has a fair wrestling ability, combines takedowns with striking, but I don't think that's going to matter too much in this fight because I feel like Marcos will keep the fight standing with that 89% takedown defense. This will be a stand-up war, and Marcos should be able to outstrike Aoriqileng for 15 minutes. I think that Aoriqileng's striking defense seems a little suspect, especially after his KO loss to Zahabi, right? That was a pretty eye-opening KO loss there. It could be a close fight if his chin holds up and he pressures Marcos like David Grant does. So that's something that I do have a slight hesitation on playing Marcos. But the pick here is going to be Marcos by decision. I'm probably going to hold off on this fight overall. I would potentially play the over 2.5, but I just don't trust Aoriqileng's chin pretty much 100%. I don't know if he's going to last all 15 minutes. I know Marcos is going to last all 15 minutes, but I'm not sure if Aoriqileng will last 15 minutes. So pick here is Marcos by decision for me. And I understand where you're coming from in terms of a solid parlay piece, especially the price that you got him at minus 200. That's pretty good.
Hmm.
Let's move on to the next fight. So next fight that we have is going to be Hyder Amil versus Fernie Garcia. And I believe that this is going to be a short notice for Fernie Garcia. And he's actually coming up in weight, right? So
Yeah.
this is going to be kind of a double negative kind of deal for him here. So Hyder
Yeah.
Amil, 8 and 0. I believe that he's coming off of that Dana White Contender Series victory. He's fighting off against Fernie Garcia. He is actually 2 and 3 in his last 5, and he's coming off of that loss right now. The odds for this fight, I think that is pretty heavily weighted towards Amil, especially for being a debut fighter. He is minus 255 opened, and now he is minus 190. So there has been some dog action taking on Fernie Garcia, which is kind of surprising in my opinion. To start off with this, I think that just to kind of get an introduction on Hyder here, I think that he's an aggressive striker. He likes to put on some pressure right out the gates, so he likes to start pretty fast. He has power in his shots. He likes to stalk his opponents and really stay in their face. I think that he can flow through the combos pretty well, and he seems to be durable with a good chin. He's an okay grappler, but he more likes to sprawl and brawl using that defensive grappling ability. But when he is on top, he likes to rain down some powerful ground and pound. Once he has, he can't get taken down, but I think he has a tendency to just get back up usually. And against a guy like Garcia. He's actually a decent all-around fighter. He has a grappling background, but from the fights that I've seen of him recently, he prefers to keep it standing and just use his striking. I think that Fernie does have solid striking skills. His hands are quick. He's able to work in body shots. His loss to Journey Newsom, though, I mean, he was actually outstruck for at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. He has been outstruck in the UFC before, so his game plan doesn't work all the time. He also has a below average takedown defense of 47%, and this is where he struggled thus far mostly. His last 2 losses were to fighters who have just worked him in the grappling hole. I do think that this should be a stand-up battle as well because I think that Amil likes to keep it standing, and I feel like it's going to go similar to Fernie's loss against Journey Newsom. Now, I'm just not sure whether Amil is going to keep it standing though, because I feel like once he sees Fernie in the cage and notices this guy is pretty small, like smaller than him, and he's on short notice, Amil may just use the grappling and just kind of outmuscle and outsize this guy. However, I feel like he will just go back to what's natural to him, just strike and keep the grappling in his back pocket in case he needs it and in case he's struggling on the feet. I would definitely be more inclined to go with Hayter as a potential parlay piece if this was not his UFC debut. I feel like he's the better fighter everywhere, but we've seen a lot of debut people just kind of fuck up the bag, if you will. So, um, yeah, Hayter by decision, but really want to play it, but I'm most likely to stay away from this too. I'm not gonna play UFC debut fighters at the moment. Alex, what do you think about Hayter Emil versus Ferdy Garcia here?
Yep. So, as you pointed out, Fernie Garcia moving up a weight class here. Um, I don't really understand it. Just because, Fernie was getting taken down at will against Rinya Nakamura. So, how is he going to fare against, guys that are a whole weight class above him? If we just look at his last 3 fights, Fernie Garcia, he was taken down 4 times by Nakamura, 3 times by Brady Heastand, and 2 times by Journey Newsom. So, like, this guy is getting taken down rather easily, fighting at bantamweight. So, moving up a weight class, math would say that he's just going to get taken down again. Um, but with that said, Fernie Garcia, does have pretty powerful hands. He knocked down he stand very early in the first round. But watching that fight against Brady, he's so low volume, and it kind of just felt like he was hunting like a knockout blow, so not really stringing together combinations to set things up. And then for Hayder Amil, he was actually in a very interesting like grapple heavy fight against Emra. Uh, I think he showed a lot of heart in that fight. It was a crazy endurance battle. You could tell by like the third round, like these dudes were just uh, spent, and it was crazy. Um, but as you kind of alluded to, I would also kind of be careful with this fight. It's kind of giving me like that Nicholas Mata, Tom Nolan vibes, where Hyder Emil, he's like very aggressive. If you watch that Dana White Contender Series fight, he's kind of like just in your face from the very first second, and so it's kind of giving me those vibes. But um, I think um, Emil actually has like a chin on him, which could be the difference here. So I am picking Hyder Emil. Um, Still debating on if I want to put him in parlays, but I am going to pick him.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you for sure. So let's move on to the next fight here. It's going to be Zach Pauga versus Bogdan Gustav. Zach Pauga, he's 6-2. He's coming off of that decision loss to Modestas Bukakis. He is fighting against Bogdan Gustav. 14-3, 4-1 his last five. Actually coming off of a loss in his UFC debut against Volkan Oezdemir, who's a ranked light heavyweight. So pretty hard UFC debut, if I do say so myself. Right now, the odds for this fight, Zach Pauga is actually a minus 123 favorite. He is opened up at a minus 160. So some slight dog action has been taken on Guskov here. Alex, what are your thoughts on this light heavyweight battle that we have here?
So Zach Paunga, what I saw from the tape I was watching is, that he's dangerous early, throws pretty heavy hooks and overhands, but doesn't really set anything up. Um, Kind of just lunges forward with heavy hands. His gas tank is very suspect, in my opinion. Last fight against Modestas Bukauskas, the fight was fought at a very slow pace. But I could tell that Ponga was slowing down as the fight went on. Not the best volume, and very 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 little use of leg kicks. But he does seem pretty comfortable in the clinch. On the other side, we have Guskov. He had such a poor showing in his UFC debut. Um, that's why, like, I'm very hesitant to put money on Guskov here. Like, I don't think having money on this fight is that smart, because Guskov got completely dominated in that debut fight against Uzdemir. Um, I just didn't see any positives for Guskov to kind of carry forward to this fight. So yeah, I my pick is going to be Ponga, but I mean I'm not really playing this one. I think it's too up in the air.
Yeah, this guy is just too much action. The Gustav, he just wants all action, just strikes with power. Keeping his hands just super low. So I'm very hesitant to have units on a fighter like that going forward as well. I mean, that's something that I don't want to have. I mean, he throws with just more power than technique. He does have some good 1-2 combos. Like he has a good jab and a cross, jab overhand. He has a hook head kick. He has some good striking, but I feel like he has below average head movement. And when you couple that with having, it looks like below average durability, I feel like this dude can just get cracked because he keeps his hands pretty low and he can get finished because he does not eat shots, at least at the UFC level so far. So I feel like he's just all striking. He has okay grappling skills though, but he likes to use those kind of body lock, clinch kind of takedowns if needed. I just feel like that's not going to work too much here because that's where Zach excels at. I mean, Zach's a pretty well-rounded, who's like decent everywhere, but he's not like super great anywhere. Pretty much, he's a decent striker, like you mentioned. Really likes to work in that clinch. You can use knees, short punches, just wear down his opponents on the cage. I think he's an okay wrestler, but he just has not shown this in the UFC so far. He really likes to just push his opponents to that cage and hold them there, attempting to use the cage to help with takedowns. He is not a sub threat even. He's a zero subs in his career. He prefers to use ground and pound once on top. I think that Zach is actually a good athlete, although he seems to be slowing down at age 35. So he seems to be past his prime in a way as far as a athlete who's a UFC caliber. I think either this fight will be Pauga pushing up Gustav against the cage and engaging in the clinch for the majority of the fight, leading to a decision win, or Gustav finding a power shot to land a KO. At the moment, I'm leaning towards Pauga grinding out a 15-minute decision victory, but I'm most likely staying away from this fight too. I think that there's too many variables to factor into this, and both these guys just do not seem to be high level enough for me to actually put some units down. Moving on to the next fight here, and this is actually going to be a much more skilled fight in my opinion. We have Max Griffin versus Jeremiah Wells. Max Griffin right now I mean, I think that he's coming off of that loss to Michael Morales, who's an undefeated kind of prospect. He's actually 19-10, 3-2 in his last five. He's facing off against Jeremiah Wells, 12-3-1, 4-1 his last five. He's coming off of that last second sub loss to Carlson Harris, where he was, I mean, Wells was dominating the fight in terms of his grappling for like 2 rounds. And then he tried to establish that takedown slash grappling in that third round, and Carlson Harris just pulled him into an anaconda choke. So that was a really interesting way to lose there for Jeremiah Wells. Odds for this fight right now, Jeremiah Wells is actually a minus 160, and he opened up at a minus 175. So there was a time where Jeremiah Wells was minus 213, so he did get bet to a heavier favorite. But in the last, I would say, couple of weeks, it looks like people have taken some dog action on Max Griffin here. Um, yeah, this is going to be a fight of two clashing styles, I think. I think that, Wells is a black belt jiu-jitsu with heavy hands. I mean, good power in his strikes, counters pretty well. His grappling, though, is where he excels at. I mean, he transitions really well, passes through the guard pretty quickly. I think he has good technique and athleticism on the mat, so it's a good combo. Solid sub skills, well versed in chokes, especially rear naked chokes. He's good at taking an opponent's back and locking in a choke from there. He also does a good job of balancing position and submission. So sometimes people like to favor one or the other. I think he does a good balance of keeping position and attacking submissions at the same time in his grappling transitions. He has solid throw and body lock takedowns combined with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills, and it makes him a really dangerous opponent in grappling situations, from what I've seen. Wells is also a pretty durable fighter. I mean, he's only been finished once. His last fight, where he was dominating the first 2 rounds, then kind of gave up his neck while attempting a takedown. So aside from that, he's been really durable. Max Griffin, mainly a striker. He's a good boxer, solid technique mixed with power. He likes to use the jab, and he pumps out decent volume as well. He also likes to move forward and pressure, although in his last fight, it did seem like he slowed down a little bit. I feel like Father Time might be catching up with him because he looked good in round one against Morales. And last 2 rounds, you kind of saw him slow down significantly. Griffin's grappling, I think he has good wrestling skills. He likes to use wrestling to mix it up, but I don't believe that he will use that at all in this fight. If he does, then I think he's in for a world of hurt grappling with Jeremiah Wells here. I think that Max, this will be an interesting fight. I mean, two older fighters. I think they're somewhat durable with contrasting styles. I believe that Griffin seems to be the fighter who is slowing down more as he ages. He just looked more gassed in rounds 2 and 3 versus Morales, whereas Wells, I don't think he was gassed too much, but he was just caught in a choke while looking for a takedown. And I feel like you fight enough times, that probably will happen. So because of this, I would side with Wells in this matchup. I think Wells inside the distance or decision. Uh, But I'm most likely staying away from this fight as well. I think that, and by the way, I feel like this is going to be a theme for me throughout the card. I feel like this is a week where you potentially play a little bit more defense than offense. Just, save some of those units for Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria, the next fight card. Alex, what do you think about this fight between Wells versus Griffin?
So I've been going back and forth with this fight. It's a very tough one for me. Um, for Max Griffin, I think he's a very solid fighter, as everything you said, great footwork, circling around the cage, stays very mobile. I like that he'll go to the body to, set up his other strikes. Very good defense, great. He's been in like a lot of decision fights, so he does have solid cardio. But with that said, he did slow down, in his last fight. And he will throw the occasional takedown to keep the opponent off balance. Um, and then for Wells, built like a tank, super wild with his shots, um, and very comfortable, with the fight going down to the mat. in his last two fights. He got three takedowns against Carlston Harris and six against Semi the Jedi. Um, so both guys are very solid in my opinion. I If I were to make a pick, I feel like Max Griffin might, out IQ Jeremiah Wells. Um, I think, Max Griffin, he's very sound defensively. Um, so he won't let himself get into those dangerous situations. Um, but, I do think Wells will definitely be able to get takedowns. But I kind of just see Max Griffin being able to get back up. So pick is Max Griffin, but I'm also staying away from this one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it should be an entertaining fight though. So we'll see who comes out on top there because both these guys are pretty skilled for
Yeah.
their division. Let's move on to the next fight. So we have Devin Clark versus Marcin Prachnio. Clark, yeah, this is where we're dropping off in terms of skill level here for this fight. So Devin Clark, 14-8. He's 2-3 in his last five. He's fighting against Marcin Prachnio, 16-7. He is 3-2 in his last five. And both of these guys are kind of coming off of two less than stellar losses, if you will. But I think both of them got finished. Devin Clark, he got finished by Kennedy Nchukwu, and then Marcin got finished by Victor Petrino. I remember that fight was a really interesting fight. Uh, so did we have Vitor by decision
Yeah.
there? Yeah, that's
Yes.
why.
Like
Oh
some
my God, dude.
heavy 3+ odds.
Almost cash. Almost cash. All right, let's see the odds right now. So Devin Clark, believe it or not, he's minus 220 right now, and he opened up at a minus 130. So he was a slight kind of favorite, almost a pick 'em, and over the course of a month, he's been steamed to a 2-1 favorite. So people are laying some heavy juice on Devin Clark. Yeah, Clark. I mean, he's actually, Alex, I'll let you break down Clark versus Prachnio first. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of going against what the sharps are saying. So my pick is, I mean, this is a dog or pass fight for me. So my pick is Prachnio. Um, because I just think he offers a lot more in the stand-up game. Prachnio has very good volume. Actually, he's almost always outstriking his opponents. So this fight really comes down to this: can Prachnio avoid those quick, speedy blast doubles that Devin Clark likes to shoot? Because if he can stuff those takedowns, he's gonna win the fight. I think he's definitely the better stand-up fighter, in my opinion. Um, so Prachnio's takedown defense stands at 54%, which isn't good. But I suspect that he will be able to stuff Devin Clark's takedown attempts and get the victory here. So my pick is going to be Marcin Prachnio.
Yeah, I like that dog or pass angle that you have. Actually, I think it's a pretty good way to cap this fight. Clark, like you mentioned, I mean, I feel like he's just more of a wrestler. He can mix up his striking from time to time, although he's just a really inconsistent fighter, doing it from fight to fight. He usually commits to shooting for takedowns. He does have solid takedown skills. He's able to control opponents once he gets to the ground or the cage. Good ground and pound, but he does not have the best sub defense. I mean, he has four sub losses in the UFC out of his eight losses. I think that Clark's striking also. I mean, he's a good kind of power in the shots, but I think it's barely enough for the 205 division. He likes to throw 1-2s, has a decent leg kick. The volume could vary from fight to fight, and also he just has not proven to be durable as well. I mean, he has three KO losses out of his eight losses in the UFC. Uh, Marcin, karate style kind of kickboxer, likes to use kicks, solid leg kicks, as you've seen with the William Knight win. Usually has good movement, can move side to side well, able to switch stances. He does leave his chin open while moving, though. I don't think he has the best chin. He's also been KO'd 3 times in the UFC, accounting for 5 of his losses. And his grappling, not much grappling to speak of. He has a below average 54% takedown defense. He has been out grappled by Felipe Lins and Vitor Petrino in his last 2 losses. At the moment, I will say that Clark will try to grapple and wrestle on Marcin. I don't see why he would want to stand with this guy, but I feel like I'm kind of siding with you. I feel like this is going to be potentially a dog situation where Marcin's going to see who Devin Clark is. I mean, I feel like both of them are going to kind of know each other's game plan, right? And it's whoever is going to be able to implement their kind of offense in a way. So I trust Marcin's offense more than I trust Clark's in this situation. I'm going to go with Marcin here for a dog odds. But yeah, I'm staying, just overall, I'm staying away from this fight for sure. I'm not playing this fight. Let's move on to a women's MMA bout. And this fight might actually be playable for me. So we have Loma Lookboonmee versus Bruna Brasil. Loma, she's 8-3. She's 4-1 in her last 5, coming off of that victory over Elise Reed, where she finished her. Bruna Brasil, she's 9-3-1. She is 4-1 in her last 5, coming off that decision victory over Shauna Bannon. Right now, the odds for this fight, we have Loma at minus 272. So she's getting bet really heavily favored right now. She opened up at minus 193 actually. So Loma, I mean, she's a Muay Thai striker, practitioner in a way, throws with high volume, can work in some trips and throws in her game plan. I mean, I feel like she's really improved her grappling in the last few fights. She sports a solid striking ratio. She hits her opponents more, and she does not get hit often. I think that her grappling is good while she is offensive. However, when she is on the defensive kind of bottom position, she can be held down to her size in the division. I mean, I feel like she's one of the smaller straw weights that we have in the division. She's like 5'1", 61.5 inch reach, so pretty small dimensions there. I think that against similar fighters in her stature, she's been able to win using the grappling and the striking exchanges. The only fight that she's lost in her last 5 was actually to a superior grappler in Lupi Godinez. So Loma is actually pretty well rounded. Bruna, solid kickboxer, likes to just work from the outside and is comfortable fighting in the Muay Thai clinch as well. She's able to attack on all 3 levels, the head, body, and legs. I think that Bruna has decent knees in the clinch, can trip opponents also from there. When Bruna is not moving forward and pressuring, she does have a tendency to fight off her back foot, and this tends to bring out a lackluster striking defense for her. She gets hit more than she lands across her 3 UFC fights. I believe that Loma will utilize the same game plan that Denise Gomes used to beat Bruna in their first fight. Loma will attempt to pressure Brazil and make her fight off her back foot for the majority of the fight. Bruna does have a size advantage here. I'm not going to lie. I think that she's like 5'6", and she has a 4-inch reach advantage, so she's going to be the bigger girl here. So that is the one worry that I have, is that she will just kind of try to use her size and impose that size in a way and kind of try to negate that grappling advantage that Loma should have in this fight. The pick here is going to be Loma by decision, but I actually see some value in the over 2.5. When I looked at it, it was minus 185. Now it's minus 210. It opened up actually at, I believe, minus 275. So people have taken the under, but I'm going to zig when everybody zags, and I'm going to over 2.5 for a women's MMA fight here. Alex, what do you think about this fight between Loma and Bruna?
Um, yeah, pick for me is Loma. Even though Bruna has a big reach advantage, she really isn't that great at maintaining distance. In the Denise Gomes fight, Bruna kept getting tagged, which led to her eventually getting knocked out. I think Loma is going to tag Bruna many times in this fight. Loma's very skilled on the feet. The blueprint on beating Loma is to take her down, but I don't see that happening here just because Bruna primarily operates in the stand-up game. Bruna did look very good in her last fight against Shauna Bannon, but I think that's just because Shauna sucks, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um, Loma has a ton of UFC experience, has fought similar rangy fighters before. So I trust that she'll be able to find her range. That's really the key here. Loma has to close the distance and not let Bruna touch her up from distance. So yeah, pick for me is Loma here.
Definitely. Are you confident enough in her to potentially put him as a parlay piece?
Uh, I don't know quite yet. Um, it's interesting because I'm definitely not that confident in the over, James. So,
Yeah,
but I mean, I just because Bruna got knocked out in the Gomes
yeah,
fight. So,
true, true.
but yeah, we'll see. But my pick is Loma.
Yeah, I mean Bruno's been knocked out 3 times actually, so that is the I see where the people are coming from in terms of this might be an underplay, but I think I gotta just do the system WMA, man. I mean we already saw a finish like a couple of women's finishes last week, right? So let's average it out, guys. Let's
But
let's average it out.
I will say this: you're very good at the round props, James. So I
Thank you.
think
I
you're on to
appreciate
something.
that. All right, so let's move on to the next fight. This is actually a breaking news kind of short notice fight. So let me try to explain what's going on here. So the fight's going to be between Bolaji Oki and Timothy Cuamba. I just learned about this like an hour ago. So we did a quick kind of DD on this Cuamba guy and deleted all the notes we had on Demir. So this fight's going to be technically a debut kind of fight for both fighters in the UFC. Both of them are coming off of Dana White Contender Series win. Oki got the contract win, so he got the contract, was close to fight Demir. Guamba did not impress Dana White enough, and he actually got sent back to the regional circuit. Interesting thing about Timothy is he actually fought like 4 days ago. So it's like fresh off the fight 4 days ago. He did get a knockout win, but that was in an organization called like Tough and Stuff or something like that. So I'm not sure if he was fighting the best competition there. Just breaking down both of these guys right now, and I don't even know we have the odds honestly because it's just so new that they haven't released the odds yet. So we'll have to kind of see what happens there. But just breaking down this fight, I think that Oki is actually an up and coming prospect. Seems to have a good mix of striking and wrestling. He likes to move forward and create all the action, good head movement and movement of the feet. I think that he commits to his jab and also can counter well. He also has good wrestling ability, able to shoot for classic double, single legs, nice sprawling ability as well to keep it on the feet if he chooses to. Cuamba, quick strikes, has a decent 1-2. I also think that he has a decent kick, especially at the body kick. He likes to target the body and then soften the opponents up. His grappling did not show much grappling other than stuffing takedowns in his Dana White Contender Series fight, but he did have some good takedowns pre UFC. He just doesn't have the best control. So once he takes people down, his opposition tends to just get back up, and he just lacks that control to really kind of implement that game plan of grappling. He does have good cardio, though. I think that will be tested here, though, because man, this guy literally just fought 4 days ago. He's coming up from weight as well, so he fought at 145. Now he's fighting at 155. Based off of what I've seen, the kind of limited view of what I've seen, I feel like Oki's just better than this guy everywhere, and he should really just dominate Cuamba. I don't know what the odds are, but if it is attractive enough, I wouldn't mind putting Oki in a parlay. The only hesitation I had before this was this was going to be his UFC debut against Demir, who not that great of a fighter, but he's UFC vet. So I had a hesitation on that. But seeing that this is going to be both of their debuts, I'm more I'm more leaning towards that Oki is probably going to be a good parlay piece, depending on the odds. So we'll see what happens. Alex, what are your thoughts on this newly made fight that they made like an hour ago?
Yeah. So I did my DD as well. I think Oki is the pick here. I thought he had a very impressive contender series win over Dylan Salvador. Especially because like I thought Dylan looked pretty good as well. Like uh, his opponent seemed like he had a lot of skills. So really impressive win by Oki. And then for his opponent, Cuamba, I thought he looked, pretty good, but like he's a featherweight moving up a weight class to lightweight. Wasn't able to, get a knockout or submission win over his opponent, which is probably why he didn't get like a contract. Didn't impress Dana enough. Uh, And I mean, I guess that fight ended up becoming like Cuamba was looking really good early, but then looked like his opponent kind of slowly crept back into the fight. So yeah, my pick is going to be Oki, same as yours. I would probably I would probably play him in parlays, but yeah, obviously depending on what the odds look like.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna get like a minus 650 or something. Just fine, but we'll see what happens. Let's move on to the next fight. We have the feature prelim of the night. We have Trevin Giles for facing off against Carlos Prates. Trevin Giles, 16-5. He is 2-3 in his last five. He's coming off of that submission loss against Gabriel Bonfim, the Bonfarad. Um,
Um,
yeah, that's not a good look. Uh, Carlos, the Nightmares, 17-6. He's 5-0 in his last five. He's coming off of that Dana White Contender Series victory with a KO victory. So that's why he's getting that shot right here at Trevin Giles. Let's look at the odds for this fight right here. So Trevin Giles, um, Carlos is actually a minus 260, and he opened up at a minus 160. So people have been fading the Trevin Giles train for the last month or so since this fight was made. Um, Alex, I'll let you start off with this fight. What do you think about this kind of UFC debut versus a quote unquote veteran in the UFC?
yeah. So this is like another fight where I mean, it looks like I'm going against the sharps in a sense. I personally don't like Carlos Prates's fighting style. He keeps his hands like very low,
Yeah,
while also leaning his head forward. So it's just a very awkward fighting style to as a viewer to look at. I don't think it's a great style. What I will say though, he has great leg kicks, stiff jabs, hooks, and knees to the body. So he definitely hits very hard. But I'm not willing to lay this type of juice on Prates at those odds that you mentioned. I think for Trevin Giles, I think his game plan should for this fight should absolutely be like grapple heavy. I think that's going to be his key to victory. Um, in Protest's contender Dana White contender series fight against Mitch Ramirez, Mitch actually secured a very, very easy takedown in the first round. Um, I think Giles should do something, similar. Um, I think, what I'm looking at and what I put a small bet on is plus 1,000 for Trevin Giles submission victory. Um, I think, as I said, he should have a grapple heavy game plan. Trevin Giles has five submission victories, although they were all very early on in his career. Um, my concerns. So I'm not necessarily picking a side. Well, I guess I am picking a side. I'm picking a submission victory. I think it's plus EV, but the concerns for Giles is that he does get cracked. I can easily see a KO victory for Prates here. Yeah, it's a lot of different outcomes, in my opinion. So, that's why I think at plus 1,000, it's, decent value in my opinion. So I put a small bet on that.
Yeah, yeah, not a bad moonshot right there. Giles, I mean, he's just a kind of a hard fighter to predict, right? I feel like he's low volume, but he has a nice jab. So one would think that why not pop that jab a little bit more, right? Why does this guy stay so low volume when he does have a nice jab? He moves around the cage pretty well. I think he counters well, but just really low volume. I don't like to see that when I look at Trevin Giles. He has been KO'd 2 times in the UFC, and two of those five losses are KOs in the UFC. So, like you mentioned, he does get cracked. Now, his grappling actually, he does do a good job at mixing in his takedowns. He has a decent 71% takedown defense as well. He has been sub 3 times in the UFC though, so 3 of his 5 losses are by sub. So Trevin Giles, basically, I mean, he does seem to get finished, right? And I feel like that's the hesitancy right here. I mean, Carlos, Muay Thai kickboxer. If you look at this guy, he has Muay Thai tattooed across his chest. So this guy's all about that stand up action, legit power in his shots. 12 KO wins in his career. 12 of 17 wins are by KO. So this guy's straight up trying to knock people out and kill them. Long straight shots, uses his reach and range well. He will be the taller fighter here and the longer fighter in terms of reach by 4 inches. Uses the kicks really well. I mean, he's able to attack all 3 levels with his kicks. Keeps his hands low, like you mentioned, so he can definitely just get popped in the face by that jab. I can see Trevin trying to do that. He doesn't have much grappling, but from what I've seen, he does have decent takedown defense. He has been sub 3 times in his career, though. However, all 3 of those times for Carlos was 10 years ago. So I'm assuming that either he hasn't fought the right competition or he's shorted up, but he has been subbed in 3 and 10 years. Uh, I think that Carlos will out volume Giles over the course of the fight. His shots will just have the higher impact, and Giles may resort to grappling if his jab does not stop the onslaught. I think that Giles will have to fight through the range of Carlos, and with just a jab and his inconsistent low volume approach, I just feel like he'll have to weather a too violent of a storm to get there. So I do agree in your sense that I think that Giles, if wins this, he needs to do the grappling as well because I don't think he's gonna be able to outstrike this guy on the feet just because of how powerful this guy is. And yeah, I'm predicting Carlos by KO, but another UFC debut. So get me out of here. I'm holding off on this. I'm just gonna watch the fight and see what happens there. But I do like that moonshot play though, man. I mean, plus 1,000 for a sub, not bad. This guy could face some grappling that he hasn't seen in 10 years. So we'll see what happens. Um, let's move on to the next fight here, and we're actually at the main card. So I feel like this fight's been rebooked like 3 times. So we have Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosyan. Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter, the grappling extraordinaire. He's 9-2. He is 3-2 in his last 5, coming off of that submission victory, I believe, over Cody Brundage. Armen Petrosyan, 8-2, 4-1 in his last 5. I believe he's coming off a decision victory over Christian Leroy Duncan, the CLD guy. Uh, yeah, so man, this fight is just so hard to predict, in my opinion. So the odds right now, minus 120 for Rodolfo Vieira, open up at a minus 130. So if I remember correctly, I feel like these are like the exact same odds that they had last time. So this is
Yeah.
literally just a pick 'em. Haven't seen too much action either way. Alex, I'll let you start off this fight here. What do you think about Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosyan here?
Tough, man. This is a tough fight. I mean, this fight is essentially a clash of two styles, grappler versus striker. Um, Petrosyan, great in the stand-up game. I think he can go toe to toe with anyone. Utilizes his leg kicks well to set up his hands. Um, if the opponent isn't pressuring him, like he'll just slowly pick you apart. Uh, One thing is, he doesn't panic when he gets taken down either. He's faced some pretty high level BJJ guys like RoboCop and Kaio.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think they're on the level of Rodolfo Vieira in terms of the grappling. I think Vieira is that good at BJJ and grappling. Um, So, he did get so Petrosyan did get controlled by Kaio Bohalio for like 7 minutes. But he never panicked. Um, so yeah, like to beat Petrosyan, I think you need to pressure him and kind of step on that gas pedal. And then if we look at Vieira, when I was watching him, he's built like a tank,
Yeah.
very bulky. He's going to shoot for takedowns, right? Like that. He's gonna do that, no questions asked. I do want to point out that there is a cardio issue on Rodolfo Vieira's side. I think the later this fight goes on, the advantage will swing to Petrosyan, but I don't know. I don't know how this fight's going to play out. So probably going to pass here.
Yeah, yeah, I understand the pass. I mean, Rodolfo Vieira, world-class Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills, actually has pretty explosive takedowns. He relies more on that speed and power to get those takedowns because, like you mentioned, I mean, this guy's a tank, pretty strong guy. Rodolfo, he can weather storms. I mean, look at the fight against Cody Brundage. He was getting kind of pieced up by Brundage in the first round, almost was KO'd, and then came back to get the sub, right? So I like that he doesn't give up easily. He will continue to try to fight and get the win. Even in that Chris Curtis loss that he had, he was not doing well. I mean, he was getting all of his takedown stuff, but this guy was trying till the last second to try to do something, which is something that I like. Even though, yes, he does have a cardio issue, but he does have heart, which is something that I like. Uh, Decent striking, but this guy is trying to get the fight to the ground and just go for the subs with his jiu-jitsu skills. Conditioning, it seems to have somewhat improved, though, in my opinion. I feel like ever since the loss to Fluffy, Anthony Hernandez, I think that he's gotten a little better, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for most of these kind of fighters in the UFC, especially the ranked fighters. So I feel like Rodolfo is probably going to top out around this level. Armen Petrosyan, decorated kickboxer, has found some success in the UFC, can be a brawler and has decent technique, good chin. I actually think he has a decent get up game. He might not have a decent like takedown defense game because he does get taken down, but he tries to actually get his way back up, and he usually succeeds in getting back up as well. But if this fight gets in any kind of grappling, holding situation, crotch sniffing situation, Armin is going to be at a disadvantage the longer that transition kind of exchange goes, right? He's going up against a guy who's just can pull subs from a lot of different angles and a lot of different ways. I saw that in his last fight against Christian Leroy Duncan. He got his back taken at one point, and Christian Leroy Duncan had like maybe almost a knee bar or something like that, where he was grabbing Armin's knee. And I can just imagine what Rodolfo is going to do if he gets in that position because Rodolfo has been known to just hop on a dude's back at some point and choke him out. So I think that this is going to be a classic striker grappler matchup. One of these fighters is going to dominate the way they're going to win. I think that either Armin might knock this guy out or just kind of dance on him for 15 minutes, or Rodolfo is going to get a sub pretty much. So I'm actually leaning Rodolfo by sub right now, but I'm passing like I did the first time when this fight was made. I just don't see much value in this fight. I feel like it's just one of those things where you flip a coin and see what happens. So that's why it's a pick 'em for both iterations of this fight. So Rodolfo by sub is my pick, but yeah, I'm passing on this fight. I'm good on that. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card here. So we have Michael Johnson versus Darius Flowers. And this is going to be the classic kind of UFC veteran versus the kind of up and comer, if you will. Michael Johnson, the menace. He's 21 and 19. That's like 40 fights. That's a lot of fights in the MMA career. He's actually 2-3 in his last five, coming off that KO loss against Diego Vieira. He's looking good in that fight. Yeah, he just got overhand right to the face, and that's all she wrote. Darius Flowers, 12-6-1. He's coming off of that UFC debut loss to Jake Matthews, but I will say that was he lost by sub, but that was up a weight class actually. Jake Matthews fights at 170, so he's stepping up in weight in that. He's going to go back into his 155 weight for this one. Odds for this fight right now: Michael Johnson minus 140 favorite. So he opened up at minus 125, and slight kind of action on him as a favorite here. Yeah, Michael Johnson. I mean, I've seen this guy for so many years. I remember when I first started watching the UFC back in the day, the Khabib days, all the great times that we had. This guy was fighting Khabib in his prime. This guy has fought a very long time, true veteran of the MMA and UFC scene. Slick boxer, decent grappling skills that I feel like he's honed in the last 40 professional fights that he's had. He still has quick hands, even at age 37. Pumps out high volume, has some pop on his strikes, good at countering. He is getting a bit chinny though at 37. As I mentioned, he was doing great against Diego Vieira, was winning that fight. I think he was a heavy favorite during the live kind of betting scene, right? And then he just got chinned by that overhand right, and that's all. He got stiff as a board. That was a scary knockout because Diego landed another shot after that too. So uh, he really reminds me of like a kind of a lower level Bobby Green at this point, right? They have kind of similar styles, if you will, and the same durability issues as they get older. Johnson's grappling, sprawl and brawl mainly. I think he can mix in the takedown every now and then when it's open for him. But this is not his wheelhouse. I mean, he has nine sub losses, pretty bad submission defense. 47% of his losses in his career have been subs. So this guy can get sub pretty easily. Flowers, not the most technical striker. I think that he does have some legit power though. Like if he catches you clean, you're probably going out. He reminds me a little bit of Derek Brunson, using kind of the bum rush your opponents with heavy shots. I think that his grappling, he does have good takedowns and he can land heavy ground pound once on top. This is going to be yet another highly volatile fight for me with two likely outcomes. So I think either Flowers will finish Johnson, like KOing him or like subbing clubbing him, more likely KOing him, or Johnson will be able to just outvet Flowers for 15 minutes to win decision, maybe a late KO, but more likely decision if he wins. I'm leaning Johnson being able to dance and strike his way to a 15-minute decision on this UFC debut. So give me Johnson via decision. I wish I didn't see that last fight because I would be definitely on Johnson here. But, unfortunately, I saw him just get chinned by Diego after doing really well for a round or so. So, yeah, I'm staying away, unfortunately. But I am rooting for Michael Johnson because he's a true OG of the sport. Alex, what do you think about Michael the Menace Johnson versus Darius Flowers here?
Yeah, so one quick note actually. I know you said he's, moving down a weight class to his normal weight class, but
Mhm.
his last two fights were welterweight, and then the three before that were middleweight.
Oh, yeah,
So
he's a big guy. I forgot about that. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah. So yeah, he's moving down a weight class actually. Um, so for me, believe it or not, I'm actually really liking the over 1.5 here. Um, I know that, like you said, Michael Johnson brutally knocked out in his last fight against Diego, which, by the way, was, an insane knockout. Johnson was dominating that fight up until that moment. Um, so, coming off of that fight and facing a dude in Darius Flowers with, two or three times the power definitely poses some serious risk for Michael Johnson. But, I just think that Johnson, he's going to show his veteran experience in this fight. I think he knows the danger that Flowers possesses in those hands. And I think he's going to play this fight incredibly safe, especially in that first round. And then again, Flowers moving down a weight class, not having the best cardio to begin with. Um, I just, late round finish might be a thing, like you said, but probably more likely a decision. So my pick is going to be Michael Johnson, but I'm liking the over 1.5.
I like that play too, actually. Now that you mentioned it, over 1.5 is minus 120 now. So you get some pretty decent odds on that prop. Yeah, let's see what happens. Like I said, I'm rooting for Michael Johnson, so hopefully he pulls it out. But over 1.5 could be good. Good value there.
Hmm.
Let's move on to the next fight on the main card. Brad Tavares versus Gregory Rodriguez. This is going to be a middleweight bout right now. Brad Tavares, he's 20-8. He is 3-2 in his last five. It says right here that he's coming off a win, but I'm pretty sure he. Oh yeah, he won against Chris Weidman. I totally forgot about that because this guy was just knocked out by Bruno Silva. I totally forgot that Chris Weidman he beat him. So Greg Rodriguez, RoboCop, 14-5. He is 3-2 in his last five. He's coming off of that victory. I mean, yeah, this is. I feel like they're setting up Brad Tavares here. Unfortunately, you know, well-rounded UFC veteran. I feel like he likes to mix in the punches and the kicks. Somewhat durable. He has been finished four times in the UFC though, and he's coming off of a round one KO loss in his last loss to Bruno Silva. Likes the point fight and win decisions. Brad Tavares has 15 UFC wins, and 13 of them are by decision. So this guy does not finish people at all. He likes the point fight. He does have good grappling ability as far as his sprawl and brawl. He likes to keep the fight standing. Has a good 82% takedown defense. Never been subbed in his career either. So a very hard guy to finish by submission. RoboCop, well-rounded MMA fighter. I feel like he is dangerous everywhere. He has legit KO power in his strikes. Likes to work in combos. Striking defense and chin. It's a little suspect though. I feel like that if people didn't know already, that Bruno Vieira KO loss where he was a 3-1 favorite, I feel like that opened up some eyes because he was a 3-1 favorite coming in. People thought I think Bruno was even coming in on short notice. People thought Gregory was going to probably steamroll this guy. I actually was on the Bruno Vieira side. I remember that very vividly. And I'm so glad that prediction played out to be true because I was like, man, Robocop just likes to brawl a lot, you know? And coming in the guy against a guy like Bruno has legit power. It's just very dangerous fight. So I think that won't be the issue here, though. I mean, I feel like Brad Tavares just isn't dangerous enough to kind of affect Gregory Rodriguez in that sense. And also, Gregory, I don't know if he'll be able to kind of use his grappling a lot, but I think he will try to mix it up. And he's a dangerous grappler with slick subs. He has good takedowns. I mean, he lands 2.4 takedowns per fight, 50% takedown accuracy, 100% takedown defense. And once he's on top, he's actually pretty hard to shake off. I think that this fight could play out similar either to RoboCop's split loss against Armen Petrosyan, where he was outstruck on the feet and was not able to dominate in the grappling department, or it could be a fight where Brad Tavares lost to DDP. So either one of those options, I'm leaning towards the option where Brad lost to DDP because I feel like him and DDP and Gregory are kind of similar in terms of their well-roundedness, but it's just DDP has a crazy good chin. Gregory Rodriguez doesn't, but Brad's not gonna knock this guy out. I don't believe. He just hasn't finished anybody in years. So give me RoboCop by KO or decision. Um, I'm actually waiting for him to just become a little bit more affordable because I mean the odds right now for Gregor Rodriguez minus 230. He opened up at minus 265. So who knows? Maybe we'll get some dog action where Gregory becomes like a minus 200 or better. That'll be a really nice parlay piece, but I don't know. End of the week, I might be just inclined to stuff him in a parlay at minus 230 even because I just feel like Brad Tavares' time, unfortunately, is over in the UFC uh, going forward. So, Alex, what do you think about this fight between RoboCop and Brad here?
Yep. So, man, I was very unimpressed with Brad Tavares in his last fight. Um, to not be able to finish Chris Weidman, who's coming back from a 2 year plus layoff. I mean, I mean, I think I'm saying that just because I feel like I had a Brad Tavares inside the distance bet. But yeah, I was pretty pissed. I didn't like that performance. Uh, with that said, though, to Brad's credit, he played the fight very intelligently, and he was able to chip away at Chris's legs. Um, I think the wrinkle in this fight is that Tavares has incredible takedown defense, like you said, at 82%, and RoboCop is a very good grappler. So I think the two will kind of cancel out. Um, but RoboCop is no slouch on the feet. I think he poses incredible danger, actually.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of asking myself, like, what is Tavares's win condition here?
Mm.
Is he going to continuously chop at chop the feet, similar to what he did to Weidman, and just get a decision victory that way? Um, I mean, I just don't see it. Like, I just see RoboCop closing that distance and being able to land bombs. So yeah, give me RoboCop in this fight.
Yep. Yep. I'm actually liking the value more and more as we kind of talk about this fight. So yeah, I'm looking to play RoboCop for sure. Let's move on to the next fight, and this is actually another kind of short notice fight. Originally, this fight was supposed to be Robert Bryczek versus Albert Duraev, but Albert Duraev actually had to pull out because of probably like a weight issue or something. But he actually got cut from the UFC after that pullout because I feel like this guy's been pulling out too many times, so they actually cut him. Um, Stepping in is going to be Eor Pateria. He's actually dropping down to middleweight for this fight on short notice, so that's kind of interesting, really, there because he usually fights at 205. Eor Pateria, he is 20-5. He is actually 2-3 in his last five. He's coming off of that knockout loss to Rodolfo Bellato, fighting against Robert Bryczek, 17-5, 5-0 in his last five. He's coming off a KO win, but this is going to be literally his UFC debut here. So we're going to see some action on him as well. Uh, Odds for this fight right now, Robert's actually a minus 195, open up at a minus 275. So people have been taking some Ehor dog action here. Alex, I'll let you start off this breakdown between Ehor and Robert. What did you think about this?
Yeah, so this fight's pretty funny. Ehor moving down a weight class, like you mentioned. So in his last fight against Bellato, I severely underrated Ehor's chances. I remember stuffing Bellato in a parlay, just one parlay. But man, that fight was a huge, huge sweat. It was he Ehor probably should have won, but the ref thankfully
Hmm.
kept that fight going. I think he was something. I think Ehor was something like a plus 300 underdog. Um, so looking back at that fight, Ehor against Bellato, it's clear Ehor had a speed advantage, and he utilized that very well. But I still stand by what I said in my last Ehor breakdown, which is that I don't rate Ehor that highly. I don't know why. I don't think he's that good. Um, so in this fight, he's not going to have as severe of a speed advantage. So pick is going to be Robert to win in his UFC debut match. I think Robert Bryczek is a very solid fighter. He looks good on the feet, and he seems to have great distance management. So, um, yeah, give me Robert in his UFC debut.
Yeah, Ehor's all offense striker. I mean, he likes to finish the fight quickly, finish his opponent quickly, moves forward, pressures his opponent. I think he has legit power, and I think the move down to middleweight, albeit it's on short notice, I think it should help him. in this area. I feel like he's going to have more power in this. Like you mentioned, though, I feel like he is going to lose that speed advantage, but the power advantage should still be there for him. He just has some suspect defense overall. Yeah, just watching the fight between him and Carlos Oberg, Carlos was just like sniping this dude like left and right, north and south. Like I'm surprised Ihor lasted as long as he did. He was just getting pieced up like crazy once the fight started. Um, his chin and has just been cracked. I mean, his legs have been destroyed in the UFC thus far. Just not good defense. Tends to fade after round one. It's like below average cardio too. So yeah, it's just not. I don't know if he's going to be in the UFC too long, based on how his performances have been going thus far. He also has a suspect 57% takedown defense, so he can also get taken down himself. Robert, I mean, this is going to be his UFC debut. He's supposed to fight Albert Duraev. I do feel like the UFC is probably trying to set this dude up. He has some pretty cool highlights. Good striker, likes to use body shots to wear down his opponents. Has KO power. His last five wins have all been round one KOs. So this guy's like just straight up finishing people like really quickly. Good movement. The one thing that I like about him, and I feel like this is what's going to determine the fight, is he can actually slip and duck some strikes coming in, as opposed to Ihor, who just kind of lets strikes come to him. I think that Robert also likes to end fights pretty quickly, same as Ihor. So pick here is going to be Robert by KO. I think he has the better gas tank and defense than Ihor. The under 1.5. I mean, I'm tempted to play this, man. I just feel like both these guys are just going to bang it out. It's minus 260 now, open up at minus 220. Yeah, I think I'm going to stuff that in the parlay, to be honest, even though it's like only a round and a half. Yeah, I just feel like these guys just like to get finished or finish each other. So yeah, give me that. Uh, but I could talk myself into the Robert minus 195. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I feel like the under 1.5 is a little bit better for this fight. Let's move on to the co-main event of the evening. What a journey this has been for 14 fights. Uh, Dan Ige, 50K, great nickname by the way. He's 17-7, 2-3 in his last five. He's coming off of that kind of grapple fuck from Bryce Mitchell. Fight against Andre Touchy Feely. That's a better nickname actually. It's 23-10. He is 2-2-1 in his last five, and he's coming off of that victory over Lucas Almeida. And the odds for this fight right now, Dan Ige is a minus 163, open up at a minus 150. So not too much movement either way. Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I actually have a side on this fight. I'm pretty confident in it. So Dan Ige is a solid all-around fighter that excels in stand and bank situations. He has legit power, like KO power at 145. I think that he works all three levels with his strikes, likes to rip shots to the body, nice leg kick. He also has great durability. He's never been KO'd before. Dan Ige is also, I think he's a decent grappler. You know, when he gets taken down, he does try to work his way back up. However, he can be stuck on the bottom by good grapplers who favor position over submission. I mean, just look at some of his kind of losses and wins, right? This guy has been held down before. So, but he's never finished. So that's a good sign. I think that he, in this fight against Touchy Feely, who's a good brawler, he likes to use his length, keep his opponents on the outside with straight shots, good kick and pressure. I think that Feely's actually also a good wrestler and grappler. I mean, he's been training out of Team Alpha Male for the longest time. Great at opportunistic takedowns as well and scramble as well. The thing I don't like about Feely is that he is hittable and he just really relies on his chin and durability as a defense, which has resulted in mixed results so thus far in the UFC. He is 7-5 in UFC decisions. He is 0-2 in subs, so he's been subbed twice. He is 4-2 in KOs though, so he's been finished by KO twice, and then he also has finished people 4 times by KO. Feely has a 69% takedown defense, but I don't know if that's going to matter too much here. I feel like Ige is going to try to make this a stand-up battle and not really a grappling battle. Uh, yeah, I just think that Ige is a more durable and predictable fighter, and will follow his game plan. Touchy Feely, I know that he's coming off of a win, a pretty convincing, decisive win, but he is throughout his career is pretty inconsistent with his game plan. I feel like if he was just going to commit, if we knew that he was just going to commit to his wrestling and grappling, he would actually have a great chance at winning this fight and would make a pretty good underdog, in my opinion. But he's also just too chinny for my taste, and Ige has legit KO power, and I feel like the danger factor would just be there for Feely the whole night. And because I don't trust Feely to actually grapple, I just feel like Ige is gonna commit to the game plan and kind of stand and bang this guy. So I will give Feely some credit. I feel like Ige is probably gonna win this by decision, but I can see the KO. But I'll give him some credit and say decision. But I'm actually really confident in Dan Ige. I'm stuffing him in parlays. I feel like he's a pretty affordable option, actually, at minus 163. So, what do you think about this fight between Touchy Feely and 50K here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also really confident in Dan Ige as well here. I think that this fight is going to stay standing, and I just like Dan Ige striking more than Feely's. Uh, Feely Feely's game plan should be to grapple, but Feely doesn't like to grapple. So, I have a feeling it's going to stay standing. I'm pretty confident in that. Um, Obviously, Ige's boxing is very, very high level. The way he's able to close distance by lunging forward and stringing together combinations, it's really beautiful to watch. He keeps a very nice tight guard, and there's really no wasted movement with his style of fighting, in my opinion. And also extremely durable. He's never been submitted nor knocked out, and all of his losses have been via decision. With that said, though, I actually do really, really like Feely. I like the way he fights. It's pretty nice. He has a lot of swagger in the cage. But I think this fight is going to come down to the intangibles. And Dan Ige just strikes me as a person that takes fighting more seriously. Seems like he's more about that business. So give me Dan Ige uh, in this fight.
Yeah, yeah. A very, very affordable option for this card. So I want to add that again. I feel like this guy's going to be some of my parlays for sure. Jack Hermansson and Joe Pyfer finally reached the main event of the evening. Wow, what an interesting kind of rise for Joe Pyfer, right? I mean, I feel like he literally the first ranked guy that he fights is going to be a main event for him. So Dana White is definitely pushing this guy. He wants everyone to be like Joe Pyfer, right? So main event right now, Jack Hermansson, 23-8. He is 2-3 in his last five, coming off of that sub loss to Roman Dolidze, which has not aged well at all. Fighting against Joe Pyfer, 12-2, 5-0 in his last five, coming off of that submission victory over Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Let's check the odds right now. Um, Joe Pyfer minus 268. So there was a little bit of value on him actually last week. He opened up at minus 250. Our man Top G got that value. I remember that. So good for him. Right now, I feel like it's just steaming one direction, and mainly it's probably due to that Dolidze loss. Because man, people saw that Dolidze was like a fraud, basically, in my opinion. I think the whole world kind of saw that, and they saw that Jack Hermansson lost to this dude. So I feel like everyone's just kind of pushing the Joe Pyfer train. Very interesting there. Alex, I'll let you break down the main event first. What do you think about Joe Pyfer versus Jack Hermansson here?
Yep. So I'll first start with Hermansson. I think he has a very unique and interesting fighting style. Um, he's very elusive, hops around and kind of circles the cage, then utilizes timing to engage with straight punches and a lot of leg kicks. That Roman Dolidze fight, man, he really should have won that fight, to be honest. But he got randomly caught in a calf slicer. Um, he has a very Hermansson. He has a very impressive resume, having fought a majority of the top level uh, middleweight opponents. And then on the other hand, you have Joe Pyfer, obviously a huge prospect. for the UFC. This will definitely be his toughest test um, thus far. So if Pyfer is smart, he should implement a heavy grappling game plan, um, especially because Pyfer doesn't really throw out much volume. He should try and avoid getting uh, poked at from distance. Um, Man, I know Top G is very confident in Pyfer, but I'm actually thinking of staying away from this one. Like, I haven't seen Pyfer go against a uh, volume-oriented fighter like Jack, and I would be a lot more confident in Pyfer if I knew he was going to wrestle, essentially. Um, so yeah, I'm staying away from this one, but I want to give it to Pyfer. I hope Pyfer wins, because he has crazy power. Seems like a very exciting fighter. Just need to see him get more experience. That's it.
Yeah, man. I'm just thinking beat Joe Pfeiffer. Beat Joe Pfeiffer throughout the whole breakdown. I'm buying. Let me buy this. I'm good on this, even with those odds. I think anything like under minus 300, just give me Joe Pfeiffer. I mean, Jack, all right, he's a solid all around fighter, decent everywhere, but he's just not great anywhere, in my opinion. He likes to move in the cage, like you mentioned. I feel like he has a really tricky style at some points. He was able to just dance on Chris Curtis for 3 rounds. He has an okay jab, leg kick, uses that to fight from the outside. I think Jack is a good grappler, but he's just not top tier. We saw that in the Roman Dolidze fight. I feel like he thought that he was a better grappler than he was, and he quickly got schooled in the art of grappling by Roman, unfortunately. He was going to win that fight. I mean, he was piecing up Roman on the feet, and I think he just let the grappling ego get the best of him in that sense. He has 3 sub wins in the UFC, 1 sub loss. Likes to push ground and pound once on top, though. He has good sub skills, has pretty good guillotine. I just feel like Joe Pfeiffer is just hand chosen. He's one of those Dana White privilege kind of people, man. I feel like Dana White has set him up with this. Dana White went through the middleweight rankings, saw that, hey, man, who's like the least dangerous dude that we can put in front of this dude and just make him a show. And I feel like he's choosing this guy to be the next contender, at least in the middleweight division. Um, Joe Pyfer's striking, likes to advance, pressure opponents. I do think he has one-shot KO power. I mean, this guy's nickname is Body Bags, bro. Like this guy, he puts people in body bags if he touches you. Dangerous once he gets close, unleashes those like looping shots. Even has some strong straights as well. He really likes to target the body. Aforementioned nickname is Body Bag, so this guy is just like really unleashes those punches really well. I also think that the reason why I'm even more confident in this pick is because in his last fight. I mean, I feel like he's well versed in power takedowns. He can shoot, use trips and throws as well. Good control on top, powerful ground and pound. That Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, even though, hey, I mean, Abdul is not that great, but Joe Pfeiffer showed enough skills in that fight for me to be able to see that this guy has the total package, in my opinion. Um, I just feel like he's well rounded everywhere. The only hesitancy that I would have that I think would make sense is this is going to be, Joe Pfeiffer's first main event, first 5 round fight. Do we know if this guy even has the cardio to go 3 rounds, let alone five? So, we'll see what happens. But I just think that this fight is setting up Joe to be the next star at 185. Jack is just not dangerous enough on the feet to make Joe pay as he advances forward looking for a KO. I do think at some point Jack will resort to trying to test Joe's grappling. However, I think that Joe will be more than enough for Jack in the grappling department. And I feel like he has a kind of a less than stellar takedown accuracy, right? It's like 29%. He does land it, but I don't think that that's going to be the person to beat Joe Pyfer. So eventually, I feel like Joe is going to find the KO or a club and sub. Uh, I'm agreeing with Top G here, man. Give me him as a parlay piece, even at minus 268. Anything over minus like 300, bro. Like, yeah, that might be a little bit too rich for my taste, but I'm buying. I'm buying on Joe Pyfer this week, giving me in a parlay. Uh, Top G, by the way, got him at minus 195. So, man, I'm
Damn.
really jealous of that. And he parlayed him with Natalia Silva. So
For
I'm
one
hoping,
G.
yeah, I'm hoping that shit cashes that G for Top G right there.
Uh,
Um, yeah,
I will say though that when I was when I was with Gerard last week, he told me Joe Pyfer actually uh they he did some like measuring thing where like you measure the power that
yeah,
you hit
I know about that. Yeah.
like a thing with, and he outpowered Francis Ngannou so at middleweight. So
This guy's dangerous, bro. I'm telling you,
body bags.
it's a dangerous boy. Uh, yeah, so that about wraps it up for the fight card. Pyfer versus Hermansson. Gonna be very kind of high quantity fight card, but I feel like there's gonna be a few fights in there, pretty high level, a few spots that we can cash in on. So let's just see what happens. Alex, what are your any kind of last thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I think looking forward to another positive green candle event. Uh, and yeah, 14 fights. So it's going to be a action-packed, hopefully action-packed UFC Fight Night card. But yeah, hopefully we do well. Stay tuned.
Definitely. Gig Green, let's go. Beer pickers, we are out. Best of luck, anybody who's playing this, and we'll see you guys next time.